Yes, we did just spend the entirety of Season 1, from Episode 2 to the end, watching Galadriel spend about every single waking moment right next to Sauron and not even know. Let's talk about the Season 1 finale of The Rings of Power. Hi, Charles is the SirBookSage here, and before we get into the Sauron reveal and what happened in this episode, I want to start with what we did not get in the season finale. There was no Adar and no orcs. So we had the main big event prior to this Sauron reveal in the entire season is the eruption of Mount Doom and the creation origin story of Mordor, right? So you think maybe we would get to see the orcs starting to set up their little orc Mordor lives. No, nothing. No Adar, no orcs. No Arendir, no Bronwyn, no Theo, no survivors of Tir Harad, nothing from the Numenoreans left behind on Middle-earth to help them, nothing at all. Now, surely you're thinking, well, they have to circle back to Beric, Isildur's horse. That good horse was looking for his master. They must do that. Nope, no horse Beric. No Isildur. They don't show Isildur should still be alive. None of that at all. Oh, and no dwarves. No dwarves, no Khazad-dûm. No King Durin, no Prince Durin, no Disa, no Balrog, nothing. All those storylines already closed out before the season finale. So what did we get? We have two very tiny brief scenes, Numenor related, but most of the season finale split its time between two main storylines. The Harfoots, the four Harfoots, trying to catch back up to the stranger to warn him about the M&M cult ladies. Half the episode was that whole storyline, and the other half was this Galadriel, Halbrand, Celebrimbor, rings, because yes, we finally got rings. Wait till I get to that. So let's start off with the Numenorean storyline, since it's very brief. We'll get there first. We had two scenes. The first one is we see Pharazôn staring down at the dying king, the king who has been dying all season, that we've only really seen maybe twice for probably a screen time of like 45 seconds, that we know nothing about, we care nothing about, because this show doesn't actually do any kind of legwork to build up any actual story of any real kind. But now he's dying for real this time. And Pharazôn announces there's going to be a grand contest. All the great artisans, architects are all going to be given their own separate little time to sit with the king and like sketch his likeness. And a winner will be chosen from one of these sketches. And then that will be used to guide the sculptors to make a grand statue to honor the king after his death. Oh, and one apprentice among all the apprentices of the Isle is chosen to participate in the challenge as well. And that, of course, is Isildur's sister, Elendil's daughter, the character made up for the show, because they had to yeet Anarion out and replace him with a made-up sister. Now, Anarion's somewhere, just he never showed up in season 1. So, of course, the sister is chosen. Now, this is actually legitimately a smart political move on Pharazôn's part. Finally, in the season finale, we get about 5 seconds of actual inner court politics being shown. Something that should have been going on the entire season. I think they just mentioned the word faithful like 3 times this whole season, but have done no work at all to begin building this ideological divide that's going to be splitting Numenor more and more as we move forward. Having 2 minutes of some moron in a town square yelling about the elves, ticker gerbs, does not do any groundwork to start laying out the ideological split that is beginning to like fracture Numenorean society. This show, again, doesn't ever do any legitimate work to build towards anything. But this is one brief little moment of Pharazôn actually doing some politicking. Something, a smart thing. I liked it. Because now, the real reason why she was chosen is so she could be alone with the king, and the king wakes up and thinks she's Muriel. So, like pretty much what House of the Dragon did at the end of the last episode, where the dying King Viserys thinks Alicent is Rhaenyra and starts talking about the prophecy right before he dies. There, it's done well and it's powerful, and you can see the impact it's going to have. And his death at the very, very end, where you hear him say, "My love," calling out for his dead queen. As he dies, I mean, that's done super well because they built his character up. And Patty Considine just, I was going to say give Oscar Isaac the Emmy for Moon Knight. The Moon Knight sucked as a show, but Oscar Isaac was great. But no, Patty Considine for me as King Viserys needs to get that Emmy. But his death is powerful and tragic and sorrowful, and you know all hell's going to break loose. This Numenorean king's death is okay. He's finally died. The old guy's been lying in bed, finally died. There's no meaning or impact to it. Now, obviously, it's going to have a big impact in Numenorean society, but this show hasn't done a single ounce of legwork to set anything up. So he wakes up, he confuses her with, thinks she's Muriel, and starts talking about, no, I know what you're doing at night. And then he gets up out of bed when she turns her back on him, and he's opening the secret door that leads up to where the chamber at the top where the Palantir is kept. So she goes up there, and she walks to the Palantir, it's covered with a cloth, and she goes and she pulls the cloth, and as she's pulling it off, the scene ends. We cut to something else. And we never come back to her again for the rest of the episode. So, nope, no payoff for this scene. We have no idea what she sees in the Palantir. You know, perfect mechanism to do some foreshadowing for season 2, but that would require that they actually have any idea what they're going to do in season 2. I doubt a single word of season 2 has even really been written yet, no matter what they're saying about being back in production. And maybe they could have shown us just having her see the wave, something she might want to let her father know about. But no, nothing, no payoff. Why is she looking at this? No, because the show is stupid. So the only other Numenorean scene we get is on the Numenorean ship, as they've almost reached Numenor again. And one ship, the other two ships stayed behind in Middle-earth. Now, I think personally, yes, this is Numenor and they're a naval powerhouse, but sailing with an injured Queen Regent back to Numenor with only one ship, without a second ship to kind of run protection, in the event there's any pirates or smugglers or any kind of scavengers at sea, is a bit risky. But, you know, this show is just, nothing like that ever happens, so no need. And we get the Queen Regent, Muriel, in the lower deck. She's counting her steps, trying to figure out how to move around because she's still blind. And Elendil comes down and they talk to her and they have a conversation. And this is actually a nice scene. We get a nice, quiet, sort of intimate scene between Elendil and Muriel. And Elendil basically opens up to her and admits that, yes, he is one of the faithful. And his name does mean, like, following the elves and the gods. So she's basically giving his head up on a silver platter, trusting that she's not really a kingsman. Because I think back in episode 3, when we first got to Numenor, there was, for like 5 seconds, they have her sort of pretending to be on the kingsman side, even though the viewer wouldn't have any idea what the hell a kingsman or a faithful is in that scene at that moment. So he's trusting her, and he's letting her know, this is how much faith I still have in you as our leader. Even though you're blind, is I'm putting my life in your hands. And it's actually a very nice little scene. And it's filmed and acted in such a way that they imply that there's this sort of interest, romantic interest between the two. Now, this is something we've wondered about when we heard they were doing the show, is if they would do this romantic relationship between Elendil and the Queen Regent. And this scene sets that up as that's something that they could do. But it was done very well. So I actually like that scene. But then they hear from up on deck, we've arrived at Numenor. So he guides her up back on deck, and everyone's standing and staring in stunned silence. And she can tell something's wrong. So she's like, okay, what's happening? What's wrong? And the camera pans, and there's black flags draped all over everything in the port, the harbor of the Numenorean capital. So the king has died, obviously. And the scene ends, and that's it. They don't show them coming in and docking and coming on shore. No, nothing at all. So we don't really have any idea what the implication of that is, because why would this show like set up anything for season 2? Why would this show leave us almost on a cliffhanger that would make you like can't wait to see where this goes? Nothing. It's just the king that you don't care about is dead, and that's it. That's the entirety of the Numenorean story in the season finale. That's all we get. So now let's get on to the Harfoots and the Stranger and the M&M cult ladies. So we have the Stranger. He kind of looks like he sees like Harfoots kind of running around in the periphery, like he sees that they're there. Now, he drops an apple that Nori had given him in a previous episode, and he's running after it, and then he stumbles upon Nori picking the apple up and looking at him, but she's all weird. And then she transforms into the M&M lady, because it was her. She can apparently transform into different disguises. And the other two step forward, so it's all three of them. They finally caught up to him, and they announce they're here to serve him because they believe he's Lord Sauron, and they bend their knees to him. And he's like looking like, what? And they sit down. They're at a campfire now at night, and they're explaining they've come out of the Far East, out of Rune. And they've been searching for him because they saw the signs. And they show him, one of the ladies has been carrying this big silver like plate around, and it's got the same sort of constellation-y stuff on it. And they explain to him that there's this one location in the Far East, in Rune, where this configuration of stars is visible, and they want to take him there because his mind has been like closed off by the Valar's punishment. So they want to find a way to break the Valar's like mind handcuffs on him, if you will, to restore his memories, restore his power. And he just kind of like gets upset, and when he gets upset, his magic comes out and he can't control it. So they actually get into a fight with him to try to subdue him because they realize, okay, he's dangerous until we can get him back home and like undo whatever the Valar have done to him. And then, of course, the Harfoots, Nori, her best friend, Nori's mom, and Sadak Burrows are there, and they attack the three cult ladies with rocks and stuff. So the three cult ladies decide the Harfoots got to die, and they set a trap. So Nori and them see them tying the Stranger up in between these two trees, and almost like a Christ-like pose. And so Nori and Sadak run over. The others are distracting them, and then to try to untie him. But it's a trap because it's really the M&M lady in disguise. And then one of the other cult ladies steps out and throws like this ninja dagger, and it like pierces Sadak Burrows. It gets him. And then all like mayhem ensues and fighting and back and forth, and Sadak Burrows manages to get a blow in himself. He takes out the ninja dagger and stabs that lady's foot, and just craziness ensues. Nori grabs the staff of the M&M lady and gives it to the Stranger, and the Stranger wakes up. Suddenly he can talk because they unaddled his brain, knocking him around with their magic. And he's like, he unveils like magic and power, and he's like, no, basically no. And then they realize he's not Sauron, he's one of the Istar. And he actually literally says, I'm good. Like that's just the level of stupidity in this show. And they realize he's a wizard. And he then like shreds the personas they have to reveal what they really look like. And guess what they really look like? They look like Ringwraiths, and not just Ringwraiths, but they look like how Frodo sees the Ringwraiths when he's wearing the ring on Weathertop, all white, shiny, and all that, but like faces of death. That's what they look like. Why do they look like Ringwraiths? I have no idea. There's no rings for them to be wraithed with, so why they would even look like that makes no sense. And why would they look like that, but like the way they look when you're wearing the one ring, which doesn't exist yet, also makes no sense. It's these show writers, these runners, these showrunners, these writers have no talent. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to write this kind of a fantasy story. I mean, these were writers like on Breaking Bad and other stuff, and that sometimes that writing skill doesn't translate into this kind of a genre. And all they basically are doing more and more as they got deep into this season, they're just basically cribbing stuff from the Lord of the Rings movies. Because they just went with, ooh, that was a cool visual. Remember that? Let's do that here. We even got the Nori and her best friend, like the slow motion Hobbit hug later in this episode. Anyway, so that happens. And then he turns them all into like thousands of little moths for some reason. Like they disintegrate into moths and flutter away. And then the staff like disintegrates. Like, okay, it's like, what? Like, we don't know who these ladies were. They don't seem to be human because they're wielding like pretty powerful magic. That would seem to make them Maya as well, though they don't actually say that, but that's about the only thing they could be. So the whole thing was just weird. It was all just a fake misdirect to try to convince people that he's Sauron so you wouldn't see the real Sauron reveal coming. Oh, and then they just go back. Shattuck Burrows, by the way, he's dying, and he wants to see one last sunrise since he has no lucky charms. So they sit down and wait for the sun to rise, and it's like the Truman Show. The sun just suddenly, whoop, it's daylight. Like in 2 seconds, the sun rises, and he feels the light, and he dies. So, by the way, a karmic death because Shattuck Burrows was a cruel-hearted bastard. Again, he condemned Nori's entire family to die in the wilderness alone because her father slightly sprained an ankle. So he's cruel. So his death was very karmic in that sense. He got, and deservedly so, if you're going to be that kind of a cold-hearted bastard. So we then cut to where the stranger and Nori are back. They're all back with all the rest of the Harfoots. And the stranger's decided he's going to head into the Far East because that part that they told him about the constellation being visible in that format from that place, he said that felt true, it rang true, so he's going to go investigate. And Nori's father convinces her to go with him, that you're part of something bigger now, he needs you, go, we'll be fine. So they're about to set off, and she doesn't know which direction to go in, so remember when Gandalf and doesn't sure where to go in Moria, and he goes, let's go this way. Let's go this way. And she's like, and like Frodo ever asks why, and he's like, because the air smells sweeter here. So we have a literal Gandalf line from Fellowship of the Ring movie right here. So you would think maybe this is a blue wizard because he's going into the Far East because that's what the blue wizards did. But he's a blue wizard, maybe, but he's speaking Gandalf lines. So they're having Gandalf, not Gandalf, but Gandalf do blue wizard things because they just so obsessed with inserting things that don't actually happen in the Second Age into the story because they want to. Now, I will say that this storyline of season 1 with Nori and the stranger is the only actual storyline that has a legitimate, proper arc where they meet, she helps. They have this thing, they have the falling out because she gets almost hurt by mistake. They make up, they can become friends again, and now they're off on a new adventure. So they managed, even if by mistake, to do a decent storyline. But they do it in the one part of the show that shouldn't even be here, that really has no purpose because none of these people are supposed to even exist at this point. The only thing they can do legitimately is go off into the Far East because that's the only way to have them now interact with other people is to do it so far away from Middle-earth that there'd be no written record of them. So I'm actually curious to see how they're going to do and handle and show Rune because Tolkien's, the whole world of Arda is meant to eventually evolve into our world. This is a mythological version of our world before it becomes our world. So outside of central Middle-earth, where most of his story takes place, the rest of the world is populated by humans of across the spectrum in terms of ethnicity, culture, and race. So you have a wide variety of people from all different races and cultures that inhabit this world. Tolkien put them all there. They're just not who the stories that he wrote were about, because it was meant to be the stories he wrote about, the characters he focused on, were meant to be mythological representations of various aspects of the Anglo-Saxon English. So, but the rest of the world is filled with all like Asian and Persian and Arabic and African inspired people. So they have an opportunity to do legitimate like diversity that's actually representation and not just diversity inserted at the cost of representation. So we'll see how they actually handle that when they get there. I'm assuming in season 2. That'll be interesting. I'm actually legitimately looking forward to seeing how they depict Rune, to see what they do. But now let's get on to the dumbest TV I think I've ever seen in my life. And yes, way worse, way dumber, way stupider than the She-Hulk season finale. And that was pretty bad. I mean, imagine you have one tiny plot in your entire season, and in your season finale, you just throw the plot away with fourth wall breaking. So, but this is not about that. Let's get to the Sauron reveal. All right, so Galadriel and Halbrand show up in Eregion. Right, Elrond's shocked to see her. He thought she was just like tanning in Valinor somewhere. And she explains, we need to get Halbrand to the healers. He was pierced by an enemy lance 6 days ago, and we've ridden from there non-stop. So Galadriel and Halbrand just rode like 1,300 miles over 6 days non-stop without a single moment of rest. Now, I guess every horse is Shadowfax in this TV show, number one. Number two, I don't think Halbrand's actually mortally wounded so bad he needs an elven healer if he can ride non-stop for 1,300 miles over 6 days. I think the guy's probably exaggerating his injuries a little bit, which, obviously. So they rush him in, and you see him being tended to in the background. And we have Gil-galad shows up, and he's like, we're out of time, boys. We got to pack up and go home. We're leaving Middle-earth. And Elrond convinces him to give us 3 more months. Like Gil-galad has any control over time. But whatever. He says, okay, give it a try. Celebrimbor has been trying to make some magical item using the mithril. Because there's no, if you've noticed, there's no elven magic in this entire show. We're in the season finale of season 1, and we have not had one single moment where we've seen legitimate elven magic being used. Nothing. Galadriel has not shown an ounce of magical ability. Not Celebrimbor, nobody, not a single one of them. The only magic that exists in this show is pretending that a Silmaril was somehow infused into mithril, and the mithril's now magical. That's it. Which is just renders pretty much Celebrimbor totally useless to the story. There's no real reason for him to be here. I'll get to that in a minute. You know, they're thinking of making a crown to give to Gil-galad, a crown of magic. Now, how that crown is going to suddenly rebirth the tree and resave the immortality of the elves, it makes no sense. Is he going to put the mithril-y magical crown on and then walk around the elf tree like 5 times, going abracadabra, alakazam, yes, I am. You know, who knows? I don't know. Like, there's no explanation for why any of this would even work in any way. And just for those who may not have been aware, no, mithril does not have Silmaril-infused magic in it. It's just a precious metal. No, there's not a magic tree dying, that's meaning the immortality of the elves is dying. None of that. Tolkien didn't write any of that at all. They're just taking a general concept of the slow diminishment of the elves over the ages and ages and ages, where they're just tiring of Middle-earth and they're tiring of being away from the Valar. And they just twisted that into, well, let's make a magical tree die and the elves all have to leave because we can't think of anything real that's interesting and would make sense. So they need to create fake urgency because they're just crappy storytellers. But anyway, Halbrand up and walking 5 minutes later. Now, for like a minute, he pretends to be, oh, I'm still recovering. But that goes away real quick. And he's like strolls into Celebrimbor's workshop where Celebrimbor's looking at some scroll. And Celebrimbor's like, can I help you? And he's like, I'm looking for the great Celebrimbor. I heard this was his workshop. Do you know him? And Celebrimbor's like, well, of course, he's me. And Halbrand is like, you're the best, man. you're the greatest. And Celebrimbor's like, why, thank you. That's all it takes to manipulate me. Now I shall do whatever you tell me to do. That is the level of manipulation. That's all it takes. You're the bestest guy, Mr. Celebrimbor. That's it. That's the total amount of manipulation it takes for Halbrand to manipulate Celebrimbor to just listening to him. Now, it took Annatar, Sauron disguised as Annatar, a couple of 100 years of working on Celebrimbor, slowly manipulating him over hundreds of years to get him to where he can start to use him and his team of elven smiths to begin crafting these rings of power. In this show, it's, you're awesome. Why, thank you. I am awesome. And that's it. That's it. So they're all gathered in the workshop because Celebrimbor has been failing. He's frustrated. Galadriel's there. They're all there. Halbrand makes an offhand comment about, well, a smithy comment about, did you try this? And that, for some strange reason, Galadriel suddenly goes, dun, dun, dun! Like her brain, suddenly notices something's wrong. Now, why Halbrand, who she knows is an experienced blacksmith, telling Celebrimbor some blacksmith thing, why that, of all things, would suddenly make Galadriel suspicious of this dude she's been next to day in and day out, month after month after month. Why? There's no reason why what he says should suddenly turn her into Monk, like Tony Shalhoub's Monk, with sense superpowers. So she calls over some Vulcan-looking dude and says, get me everything you know about the Southland Kings. So here's the amount of advice that Halbrand gives to Celebrimbor to expand Celebrimbor's mind and make him rethink everything. This is basically what Halbrand says. Did you try using an alloy? And Celebrimbor says, of course I tried using an alloy, but it dilutes the mithril too much. And then Halbrand's like, yes, but did you try second alloy? And Celebrimbor's like, whoosh. I've never could have even conceived of using second alloy. It's basically Halbrand told him, did you turn it off and turn it back on again? That's the level of advice Halbrand gives that blows Celebrimbor's mind. This is how stupid, how utterly dumb this show is. And then he gives a second piece of advice. And it's something, well, it's we're having trouble, it just won't bond with these alloys. Yes, but did you try doing it a little delicate instead of hard? Maybe that'll work. Again, mind expanded into the size of the cosmos. I could never have thought of such a thing. So basically, his second piece of advice after did you turn it off and turn it back on again is, did you turn it to the right instead of to the left? That's it. This is the mind-blowing, staggering advice that Halbrand, who's supposed to be who's the stand-in for Annatar, gives to Celebrimbor that expands his entire concept of craftsmanship. This is, again, the level of absolute stupidity, because these writers don't know what the hell they're doing. They can't write this stuff. The second piece of advice, by the way, he says, consider it a gift. That's supposed to be, remember Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, giver of gifts? We're all supposed to be the Leo meme, from that movie. No, it was just laughable. It was laughable. Because since they can't actually think of anything, they just steal little things. And you may say, well, this is an adaptation. That's something that he would know. Yes, I know, but don't do it in the dumbest possible way, please. Just try to do it even remotely smart. So he goes out to Galadriel. She's got the scroll that shows he's a liar, that he's not the king of the Southlands. The last king died 1,000 years ago with no heir. There are no kings anymore. So who is he really? And right before this, he's like, oh, Celebrimbor is getting ready to do his thing. We're making him smaller, and we're making 2, because that'll be cool. And then she confronts him. And then he's like, I've been alive since the beginning of all, and I've gone by many names. And then she tries to kill him because, that's what Galadriel would do. She realizes he is Sauron. And then he jumps into her mind. And then she's back in Valinor with Finrod. And Finrod's telling her, oh, Sauron, he was a swell fella. He was a good guy. He didn't kill me. He was just trying to make peace and heal the world. Just people didn't give him a chance, right? And now, I get it. They thought that this would be a cool callback to the opening prologue and Finrod and him using Finrod to try to manipulate her. Two problems with this, however. One, Finrod's literal dead body with the Sauron Mordor symbol carved into his chest. So, yeah, I think she kind of knows that Sauron wouldn't be a good guy anyway. And Finrod died saving the life of Beren, and of Beren and Luthien fame. So Beren would have probably at some point had a conversation personally with Galadriel to tell her firsthand how her brother died. So she would know all about the evil stuff that was going on and being done and the torture and everything from Sauron and his minions. So it's just, I get why the show did it, but it's stupid. Because now they're making Sauron just dumb. Because Sauron should know that that wouldn't work. But anyway, he realizes it doesn't work, and they're suddenly on the raft again, like in episode 2. And legitimate, cool-looking shot where he tells her, look in the water, and the camera like spins, and you see their reflections, and his reflection is Sauron with the helm and everything. Very cool shot, you know. Wish we could have had more stuff like that in this season. But then we get to this, just what may be the dumbest single scene I've ever seen in the entire history of television. They're standing like real close, like face to face. And okay, if you've seen, what's that, the 365 days where the lunatic kidnaps the woman and makes her his sex slave, and she falls in love with him and marries him. And he says like something, he's always saying like, where you going, baby girl, or whatever. Like, it's that cringe level crap here in this scene between Halbrand, who's now obviously Sauron, and Galadriel in her mind on this imaginary raft. And he's reaching out and he's cupping her chin and he's telling her, he basically steals line for line what Galadriel says to Frodo in the Return of the King film when Frodo offers her the ring. And she says, you can, in his place would be a queen and all this stuff. So they have Sauron say those exact words to Galadriel here. Now, I get what they were going, ooh, look, this is her remembering what he told her here in this scene. So when you see this again in the Fellowship of the Ring movie, it's going to make that iconic scene even better. No, it's like you don't know how to write anything, so you just steal stuff from a completely different Tolkien story. This is Second Age, right? So it makes it look like, so it basically looks like, hey, you know, you can be my queen and we can rule the universe together. And she's like, no. So basically Halbrand, Sauron, is like, I want to tap that ass. And she's like, you're not tapping this ass. And he's like, yes, I am going to tap that ass. And she's like, you'll never tap this ass. And then he turns into a rage monster. So it almost is done in a way that implies, like, because Sauron, you know, couldn't tap Galadriel's ass, she wouldn't let him, that he's going to turn into a Dark Lord again and rain death and destruction and commit genocide because he couldn't tap that ass. Now, I think I saw on Twitter today, the statement came out from the actor where he was saying there wasn't meant to be any implied romantic connection between the two at all. That wasn't meant to be there. So I don't know if that's them backtracking, but the way the scene played out, it very much looked like they were trying to say that Sauron is an incel and being rejected by a woman is what's going to send him down this path of evil again. So that's the way the scene played out. Now, according to the actor, not meant to play out that way, but that's how the scene's like straight up played out. And they're yelling at each other with their angry faces, and then he vanishes. And she wakes up wet, like in the brook, that little brook outside of Interregion, outside Celebrimbor's home. And she almost kills Elrond. And she's like, tell me something only Elrond would know, so I know it's you. And he does. And then she's like, and he's like, what happened? And she won't tell him. Now you think she would go, Halbrand is Sauron. We got to stop whatever Celebrimbor is doing. No, she doesn't tell him. She doesn't tell him. He knows something's wrong. She's like, admits something's wrong, but yeah, I'm not going to tell you. So she just runs off to go into the workshop. Now you assume she's running in there to stop Celebrimbor from doing whatever Sauron told him to do, because it would be evil, right? Right? Okay. She bursts in, and they're like, "Where's Sauron? I mean, where's Halbrand?" And she's like, "Oh, Halbrand's gone. We'll never see him again. But if you do see him, you can't trust him. Don't do anything he says." But still, doesn't tell anybody she's Sauron. You think you'd let them know about this critical information? And I get, oh, she's embarrassed, you see. She doesn't want to let her admit her mistake. Oh, no. She kind of needs to let everybody know that that's literal Sauron, and they should probably be hunting for him. But anyway, does she then say, "So don't do what he told you to do"? No. She says, "Let's make 3. Let's triple down on the Dark Lord's evil plan." This is the stupidity. And yes, you heard that right. 3. Yes, they suddenly decide to forge the 3 elven rings first, here, in a room full of people. So let me say that again. They didn't forge the 7. They're not forging the 9. They're going straight to the 3 elven rings. All right. And the only way they can do this, they've realized the only thing that could bond the mithril could bond to is silver and gold from Valinor. So the dagger, her Finrod dagger, that lovely Finrod dagger, her lone connection to her dead brother. Now, she never mentions that she had 2 other brothers that got killed in the First Age Wars. She don't give a crap about them for some reason. But she gives up her dagger because they need the silver and the gold from Valinor. Now, they just throw the whole dagger in a bucket and dunk it in and melt it. They don't bother actually trying to extract the specific silver and gold. It's just they throw the whole thing, hilt and all, in. So, whatever. And then drop the mithril in. And then, of course, the molten stuff is spinning, and the mithril looks like the slit in the eye, so it's like... like you can just insert Sauron's laugh off screen, and you could picture it in your head. Because it's like, ooh, evil still happening, people. See the Sauron eye? And they pour it into some molds, and wait for it to harden. And then they take it out of the molds. So it's these little, like, sort of strip things. And then those are then molded and crafted into 3 rings. And the 3 gemstones, 1 each, are put on them. And there's the 3 elven rings, looking like cheap crap knockoffs you can buy on the QVC shopping channel. Now, how is one of them silver and the other 2 are gold? If they just melted everything down together. So it was all one big giant mix of gold, silver, and mithril. How is one of the rings silver and the other 2 gold? It shouldn't be possible for them to be different from each other because it's all mixed in together. Now, the reason one of them is silver is because in what Tolkien wrote, Celebrimbor forged these. He made one of the 3 rings, the ring part, out of mithril. That's the ring he gives to Galadriel later. It's a mithril-made ring, and then it has the gemstone, and it's all infused with elven magic. For some reason here, it's just magically silver because it needs to be, because that's how it is in the books. So you do realize that the only thing that apparently makes these 3 elven rings magical is the mithril, because the show decided to make magical mithril infused with silmaril power, in which mithril isn't. It's just, again, a precious metal. So that's the only thing that actually makes these 3 rings magical. So Halbrand, Sauron, didn't actually do or say anything that would legitimately give these 3 rings anything embedded in them that would let his 1 ring control them when he forges it later. There's nothing in here that would actually connect his ring to anything. Nothing. Because what happened in the books, what Tolkien actually wrote, is Sauron, disguised as Anatar, he begins teaching Celebrimbor and his posse of elves. He's got a whole group of master craftsmen who live and work there in Eregion. They have a name for them too. The name for his posse escapes me at the moment. High level, celestial magic that they can use to craft magical rings out of. So Anatar is the one who teaches them this particular technique that will make it work. And they don't understand that embedded in this magic is a little tiny piece of his own. That is what then gives his ring influence and connects to all the other rings that they make. Because he embeds it. Basically, if this was code, he shows them how to write code that they don't realize has a virus embedded in it that he can then connect to from his computer back home in his house. So that's how it works in what Tolkien actually wrote. The magic is so intricate and such a high level that they don't see what's embedded in it that will interconnect everything later to his ring. In this show, they're just magical because Mithril. Magical Mithril. And they're staring at the rings. And then we cut to Halbrand, Sauron, who now has this sort of dark evil look. And he's standing on top of the mountain range looking down at Mount Doom. And he begins to walk down. And that's it. That is the final episode, episode 8 of season 1 of the Rings of Power. I'm going to do a kind of full season 1 recap video. But I will just say, what a disappointing show. I mean, I wanted this to be such a great show. And what Tolkien wrote is still there. They have an opportunity to course correct now that they've gotten past the whole revealing Halbrand as Sauron. They can actually just move on to legitimate plot now. But we'll see. I don't know. At this point, I'm not going to be asking for a great season 2. I'm not even asking for a good season 2. I'm not even going to be asking for a decent season 2. I just want a season 2 that doesn't just completely suck ass the way season 1 has been. That's all. Just can you come up with something that's just not absolute garbage and absolute idiocy like this season 1. If you haven't seen my other Rings of Power content yet, you can click on this playlist here on the screen. And I look forward to seeing you in the comments because I want to know what you thought of this season finale. And I will be doing a season 1 sort of whole recap video at some point soon. I might do that as a live stream, actually. We'll see. But yeah, let me know down below what your thoughts are. I want to know. I am Charles, SirBookSage. Happy reading.